Welcome to the Practice You podcast. My name is Elena Brower. Let's dive into today's conversation regarding life's myriad transitions and how we refine our responses in our relationships, our wellness, our households, our work, and in our practices. You are invited to learn and love and listen with me. Welcome to Practice You. Welcome back to the podcast. I have with me a woman who applies both for the Practice You podcast and for the matter of menopause. So this is also a matter of menopause episode. Welcome, Amber Romaniuk. You are a gift to this world, definitely a gift to my understanding. Your work in the realm of emotional eating is super important right now. I'm seeing it so vast all over the world of social media and also in my friends. There is a big need for the work that you're doing. You're an emotional eating, digestive, and hormone expert. You've got 12 years of experience helping women create a high level of body confidence, intuition, and optimal health through mindset, healing, self-care, and overcoming self-sabotage with food. It's not something that we talk about so openly, and I'm really happy to have you here, Amber. So welcome to the podcast and to the matter of menopause.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be with you today because you're right. These self-sabotaging behaviors with food are an epidemic that need to be properly addressed.
Yep. Some of the recent work that you've done that I appreciate the best is the work that you're talking about with regard to addressing all the dimensions of our health in more natural ways than the use of necessarily supplements and even prescriptions. I really appreciate this because a lot of the work that I'm trying to do in my own body is just, go to sleep on time, wake up with the sun, get some sun in my eyes in the morning, eat a full meal 3 times a day, nourish myself, take care of my body, rest when I need to. These are things that I wasn't doing for 30 years. And I'm kind of playing catch up right now. I struggled with my own body dysmorphia in my teens and into my 20s. I managed to get through that with some modicum of speed. And I find myself now still in this funny place of prioritizing work over nourishment, prioritizing efficiency over peeing, like taking care of my own body. What is wrong with me? This is still happening. I'm in my mid-50s. I would love to hear about your experience with women sort of denying the signs of their body and how you help.
Yeah. And this is the story of so many. And I think one of the biggest things is that we have been so conditioned and programmed to give to everyone else, to overbook, to overexpend, to make sure that we hustle and get everything done, that we work hard, and that we make sure that all these other external things are taken care of. And it becomes a comfort zone. And that's where we will innocently throw ourselves under the bus, not even get up to take a bathroom break, not stop to eat, not go to bed on time, right? Not take any time for self-care or things that bring us joy because we have been tying our worth up into how much we do rather than it being a feeling that we can cultivate in any moment because you're worthy, because you exist, and there is no other thing that you need to add in to make you worthy. But we have tied the worth to our weight, the number on the scale, to how we look, to how much money is in our bank account, again, to how much you can get crossed off your to-do list in a day. And if your worth is tied up into external things, you are going to need, coming from a place of need, which comes from lack, which comes from I don't feel good enough. You're coming from that place of need that I have to get all these things done so that I can finally feel good enough or validate myself that I'm good enough, or I can do all these things and people please for others and get validation from them that I'm good enough. So we're giving our power away to all these external circumstances and other people in hopes that we'll get the validation, which gives us a little dopamine high, a little reward feeling that gives us a short-term feeling of pleasure. And then that becomes our comfort zone and what's familiar, and what becomes unfamiliar is actually taking time for self-care or time to feel through an emotion, because that feels terrifying if you're not taking any time to do that, to actually set healthy boundaries with others, set boundaries in our schedule, get to bed on time and start prioritizing our needs. But if you're not used to doing that, it's going to feel incredibly unsafe and uncomfortable to your nervous system and your body, because right now your brain and your nervous system are wired to keep you in survival and keep reverting you back to what has felt familiar and comfortable, even if it's not serving your health or your greater good. It's like when I used to binge and emotionally eat and went through bulimia and food addiction. I was suffering immensely. I was to the point where I was eating out of my garbage can, throwing the food in the back alley dumpster and going and grabbing it. I was suffering immensely, but food and using food as a coping mechanism because I didn't feel good enough was safe. It felt safe. It felt familiar. It felt comfortable. And until I started to realize that, wow, this is actually not serving me and this isn't going to work for me. And I'm probably not going to be alive in 10 years if I keep to this level of destruction with myself. I had a big wake up call of I need to be willing to go into the discomfort and start making some changes, because this is having such a negative impact on my health. And I think for so many women, this is accumulated for years or decades, where something happened when you were a kid that you had to start being adult as a child. You fear abandonment, you fear conflict, you fear being rejected by others. And so therefore you morph and mold yourself to be whoever other people need you to be, but then you suffer.
What's interesting is that is basically the story of my life. I was always trying to achieve so that I would be seen, so that my parents would care, love me more. All of those things sort of brings a tear to my eye. So thank you for bringing that up.
My pleasure.
And I wonder, dear listener, this is more emotional than I thought. If you've had any struggles with food or your weight or the way you look or feel in your body, and if you could just take a moment with me right now and take a breath and reorient yourself to this present moment, to the safety that's here, to the wisdom that's here, to the body that you have with which you've been gifted, and to the care that we now know we can give to ourselves and to our bodies in this season. Wow, I didn't expect to have tears in my eyes. Thank you, Amber.
My pleasure.
Yeah, you're both online and in person. And I think one of the more important parts of this is the emotional eating quiz. I do think that it's relevant for a lot of us. And this quiz is, it's pretty easy to go through. I would recommend taking it for whom this might apply. If you find yourself craving, if you snack or eat when you're annoyed, anxious, or sad, if food helps to calm you down when you feel stressed or upset, if you continue to eat when you're already full, if you eat less after a day of overeating, still this is happening for me. I won't read anymore, but I do think it's important for our listener to explore this, and I'll be sure to include the links in the notes with this episode. Your 12 years of experience were hard won, and they came after you, as you mentioned, struggled yourself very seriously with all of these limiting beliefs and behavioral patterns. How did you get out of this mess, Amber? Who helped you? How did you work through it? And secondly, how does your work today keep reminding you of the work that you're always going to be doing, as we all are?
Yeah. So how did I get out of the mess? Well, I had to have those low point moments, like I said, where I was eating out of my garbage and eating out of the dumpster in the back alley, because I was actually in denial. I was like, oh, what I'm doing isn't a big deal. Food's my friend. It's there for me. I get to decide what I want to eat and when, and it tastes good. So I was in this big denial that what I was doing to myself wasn't a big deal and wasn't hurting me. And when I had those low point moments where I ate out of my garbage, where I threw the food in the dumpster and then went and grabbed it and ate it and felt such immense levels of shame and guilt and embarrassment and hopelessness, I personally needed that low point moment to happen so that it could crush the denial. That moment essentially helped me be authentic and lovingly honest with myself, which was, this is a problem. This is having a significant negative impact on every area of my life. I can no longer deny the significance of these behaviors. And it also crushed the fear I had around dealing with it or starting to deal with it, the fear of the unknown. Who would I be if I healed my relationship with food? Who would I be if I wasn't using food as a coping mechanism? And all that fear was crushed. And I was so inspired and motivated to get on the journey to healing. And I had no idea what it was going to look like. I had no knowledge of anything I do to this day. I went to school to be an entertainment reporter, not anything in health and wellness. And so it was all foreign to me. And the way I describe it is I felt like I was on the edge of the Amazon jungle with a butter knife, getting ready to like find my way through to the other side because I was so intimidated. I had like 90 pounds to lose. I had significant hormone issues. My digestive system was a war zone. I hated myself and I was deep into these behaviors, binging 6 to 7 nights a week. And so I actually did this journey on my own. One time I went and saw a psychologist, and I'm not putting down anyone else in wellness. However, I had a poor experience, essentially shared everything for the first time. And she looked at me and said, just don't go to the store and buy the food and love yourself. And that didn't feel good. And so I just kind of had this invisible nudge of like, you're going to figure this out just one step at a time and get on the journey. So there were several layers to the healing, which I'll just briefly touch on. But these root causes of these behaviors are incredibly important to address. So instead of continuing to try and diet and quick fix, which was only distracting me and disconnecting me from going inward to do the inner work, which is where the healing happens, right? That's what I had to really acknowledge is like diets aren't working. Another eating style isn't going to work. Paying a personal trainer is not going to fix this for me. I need to be willing to understand why I'm doing this, why I don't like myself, why I'm afraid to feel my emotions, and why I don't have any healthy ways to cope with stress because I was horrible at dealing with stress. And so I started to learn about food and some of the ingredients in our food first, things like processed sugar, MSG, and starting to learn that these products are highly refined to give you a huge high, a drug like high. We produce a neurotransmitter in the brain called dopamine, and it literally gives you a pleasure feeling. However, relying on food for pleasure on a regular basis is going to have a negative impact on all aspects of our being because there's so many other ways to experience pleasure. But food is so easy because it's everywhere and it's highly addictive. A lot of the things we're eating on a regular. And so when I started to learn that sugar was 10 times more addictive than cocaine, it was like, I'm not crazy. It's not just me. Like they're literally putting ingredients in food to make people addicted to it and increase your appetite levels and your cravings. And so I started to change the way that I ate. And when I still wanted to binge on a whole jar of natural peanut butter and 10 bananas or a whole bag of cashews and healthier items, I was like, wow, this is so much deeper than just the food. And that's when I was like, you know what? There is a much deeper layer here on the emotional, right? Neurological, physical, like all the levels. And so the first thing that really started help me to build traction was I needed to understand what was actually triggering me to binge and emotionally eat. I didn't know what my triggers were. So I started a list. And then every time I was triggered, I would try to go to my list first before I would go to the store and buy the food. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but I started to build traction. And then even if I did give in afterward, I started dedicating time to explore why did I do that? What happened? What were the triggers that came up? Because awareness is your first step. You have to understand why you're doing what you're doing, and understanding your triggers will help you with that. Now, here's the thing. Most of the women that I end up working with have dozens of triggers. Triggers are multidimensional. You can have physical, emotional eating triggers. And what I mean by that is hormone imbalances or other physical symptoms that become triggers, emotional eating triggers, energetic triggers, behavioral triggers, environmental triggers. So this is where it's like, you're not crazy. It's not your fault. We have not been properly educated about the depth of binge and emotional eating and food addiction and bulimia. And your triggers can come out of nowhere. And if you don't know what they are, how are you supposed to know what to do with them and shift them? So like gift yourself grace and compassion. So that was really empowering. And then from there, I started to realize, well, I need other ways to cope if I'm not going to food because this is really scary not having a safety blanket. So I started journaling, meditating, reading self-help books. I started getting out into nature more, getting my feet in the grass, getting sunshine. crying, like feeling my emotions. That was a huge thing because I was so terrified to feel. And my inner critic, which I call the ego mind, had made all these massive stories around if you feel like the world's going to end. Like it was so hyped up. So I kept avoiding it because I was so afraid that something bad was going to happen if I felt. And one day I was feeling triggered and I specifically was feeling fear. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put 30 seconds on a timer and I'm just going to try to feel for 30 seconds. And that's always what I suggest when we're easing into this is just small little steps because it can feel very uncomfortable. And I get the validity of that. So I want to just ease into starting to feel rather than throwing yourself in the deep end, which can be really stressful on your system. So I just put the timer on and I felt fear for 30 seconds and it helped me go, wow, nothing bad happened. I felt, and now I don't feel triggered anymore. Wow, I can do this. I believe in myself. And every little step that I took to try something different helped me have more belief in myself that I would actually be able to heal and overcome this. And then I had to really work on the self-love piece and the self-worth piece because it was constant criticism, constant negative self-talk, constant hopping on the scale and tying my weight to my worth and all this kind of stuff. And so I started to apologize to myself if I said something negative about myself or my body. And then I started to compliment myself, bringing in affirmations, tapping, breath, visualizations and things like that. And I'm telling you, it's not going to feel real at first. Like when I started to tell myself, I like myself, I love myself, it was such a rejection. I rejected it. I felt like a fraud. I'm like, I don't really feel this, but you have to rewire and reprogram your subconscious mind because you have been negative with yourself for how many years or decades? Of course, it's not going to feel real at first, but you have to, be in the repetition of it and keep doing it because it will click at some point. You were born worthy. You are worthy right now, but you have forgotten or been conditioned that you're not. So we need to replug that cord in because once you remember again and you feel it, you will have it forever because it will lead you. And as I worked on all these things and detached my worth from the number on the scale and healed people pleasing and stopped proving and healed perfection and all these different aspects, I really came home to myself, to my power. I really felt the self love for the first time. And it all fell away behind me. No more binge eating, no more emotional eating, none of it. And having peace with food in my body was one of the most liberating gifts to give myself because the amount of mental space that I opened up for myself, that I wasn't worried about food or my body or my weight and all the negative self talk, like all that chatter fell away. And I had capacity to enjoy my life, to process through whatever stressors came my way, but have faith in myself that I can get through anything that comes my way because I have the tools. I've got my own back. And, that was very liberating to open that time and space. And that also helped my hormones balance and my gut balance. It took time, but I got there. And then, realizing that I was sensitive to energy was the last piece, and being an empath and being very intuitive and kind of being intimidated by that at first. So I had to really ease into like energetic boundaries and managing my energy and things like that because I can feel a lot of things, the collective, people and their emotions. And I'm very solid now. I have very strong energetic boundaries. I don't take on my clients' stuff or anyone's around me, but it took time to work toward all of that. So as you're hearing me share this, like it's very multidimensional and you've got to be patient with your journey because it is going to take time to shift. But the reality is it's truly a small chunk of time that it's going to take to shift compared to the rest of your life that you have to be in your worth, to be in your power, to love yourself, and to be free with your body and food. It is truly worth spending that time making those changes. And so, how that transitions into the work that I do and what my clients always remind me of is a few things. The first thing is the discomfort that you feel when you think about making these changes. It's not a small thing. You're literally up-leveling your identity, who you are. That is a big deal. You are literally going to regrow parts of your brain, right? Like there's physical, structural changes that are going to happen, and it's okay that it's going to feel uncomfortable, that you may have fears or doubts around, addressing the roots or going on a more holistic journey. What if I fail? What if it doesn't work? Like we want to acknowledge all of that, but we want to reassure you that it's worth it. And you're going to fail on whatever journey you decide to go on, but failure is a teacher. And the more you learn from it, the more you get to take forward in your healing. And like I was talking about earlier, awareness is your superpower. The more aware you become of how your body works connecting with her and learning to communicate with her and vice versa, understanding your triggers, like this is awareness you build over time. And that's what helps you feel sovereign and empowered living in your body. Because if a symptom comes up, if a trigger comes up, you start to know what it is and why it's happening. And then you can take the empowered steps to deal with it rather than feeling like I have no idea. I don't know why this is happening. There's something wrong with me. And that is all very liberating. And then the miracles that happen, witnessing women miraculously heal their bodies, build their worth, heal their marriages. I've had 3 clients this year that have like healed their marriages because they are now lovingly speaking their truth. They're communicating with their spouses, they're setting healthy boundaries, and they're no longer holding everything in resentment, being upset at their spouse, even though their spouse didn't tell them to shut up, right? So that's really fascinating. Women who are pre-diabetic or diabetic, bringing their blood sugar numbers back to normal and not needing medication. Hormone imbalances that were causing serious anxiety, PMDD, like there's just so many things that resolve and clear when we address the roots of these behaviors.
Yeah. So much to digest there. I feel I'm really lucky to have you here in my ears right now. And I know that our listener is also feeling the same. I wonder, Amber, when you say pre-diabetic, and I'm sort of asking because I'm right now wearing a CGM and pretty committed. My baseline glucose, according to the CGM, is about 100 on average, which is higher than I want it. And I have to now, I just got the little blood test with the strips to make sure that the monitor is calibrated correctly. But given the many of us who have slightly high, slightly elevated baseline average glucose, what do you recommend first in terms of, I'm thinking like, I would love to hear a day in the life of your food. I would love to hear any other adjacent recommendations that you have for those of us who are working our way back down to a baseline normal.
Yeah. So, what's actually way more important than food is you have to heal your relationship with food. If you really want to see the blood sugar come back down, that is one of the key things because it is a huge stressor on every aspect of your system. It's spiking your blood sugar, it's increasing inflammation, it's spiking cortisol, your stress hormone. And if all of those things are happening, you can try and eat as good as you want. At some point, you're going to get triggered to emotionally eat again, and that's going to stress everything out. So to me, healing your relationship with food while we support lowering inflammation, balancing your cortisol and supporting your adrenals, adding in blood sugar supporting foods, cinnamon, rooibos teas. Most women are deficient in their protein intake. So making sure that you're getting, 25 to 30, 40 grams of protein with your breakfast and adequate protein and fat with your meals is incredibly important for balancing blood sugar. That's the other thing is women are still afraid of fat and eating enough. And if we're not eating enough, that's also going to negatively impact our blood sugar. There's also, I think a couple of really powerful supplements that can help with balancing blood sugar. However, to me, it's like the habits and behaviors. Even if you're not emotionally eating, but you are a chronic people pleaser, you're constantly overbooked and you're last on your list, that is going to increase your blood sugar because, again, you're stressing your nervous system out. Your cortisol is probably high, which fuels higher inflammation. And that stress that your body is experiencing could be negatively impacting your sleep. You're likely in negative self-talk. And as soon as you go into negative self-talk, you're putting your body into a stress response, which is directly impacting your blood sugar. So as you're hearing, yes, we can add in foods and teas and spices and even a couple of supplements, but like 90% of it, in my opinion, to blood sugar regulation is the habitual and behavioral changes and working on the mindset and building our worth. I have a client who was diabetic for 35 years. Her hemoglobin A1C, she was in the UK, so the measurements are different, but her hemoglobin A1C was up to 125 and she was on insulin and all these medications when we started working together. And it should only be a 45. Normal is 45. And her biggest issue, she was emotionally eating. She was people pleasing. She was right in these self-sabotaging behaviors. And so we worked together for a year to eradicate those things. And her hemoglobin A1C is now a 48. So she's going to be able to come off her medication in a month once it drops a little bit more. But it was the biggest part was the habits and the behaviors and learning how to regulate the nervous system.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm in the middle of a launch of my book, and I've been tracking myself on the CGM for some time. And in the last few days, I've just had appointment after appointment, taking care of this, sort of quote unquote success. And I watched in my sleep last night after having a perfectly normal salmon dinner, no dessert, no dark chocolate, nothing. I'm looking at my numbers right now and I'm seeing that my blood sugar was going up within range, like under 125, but it was going up and down all night long. And I can only attribute this to stress.
Yeah.
It is remarkable to me.
Yeah, it plays such a huge role in everything in the body. We know that our adrenal health and our cortisol is directly correlated to our blood sugar. And if we have adrenal stress and our cortisol is too high or too low, well, that imbalance's best friend is a blood sugar imbalance. You can't just go live in a box and never have stress. But it's also, we need to start getting lovingly honest with ourselves and going, where am I pushing out of lack or unworthiness or not feeling good enough? Where am I needing to prove or be in perfection? And why am I doing that? Because I am watching my body and my blood sugar and my hormones or whatever it is, and I am seeing the impact of these behaviors or thoughts or feelings on that. So knowing that, like, why am I continuing to do that? There is some form of a comfort zone as to why we continue to tolerate it while we witness the impacts it's having on us.
Yep. It's remarkable.
It's a journey. It's a deep journey, and we got to gift ourselves grace because we create these mechanisms and behaviors as a form of surviving, right? And they serve us to a point to where they don't serve us anymore. And then that's where the biggest shift lies, because your brain is wired to keep you alive. Its first goal is not making you happy or feeling joy. It is to keep you alive. And if we think about changing our habits, changing our patterns, changing our behaviors, right? Setting a boundary, saying no, asking for help, speaking your truth, catching an emotional eating trigger and feeling through it, whatever it is for you. And you start thinking about actually doing the thing that deep down you want to do, your fight or flight center of the brain goes, no, that is uncomfortable. Discomfort is a threat to your survival. Revert back to what is familiar. And until you flip that switch fully and rewire and have what is familiar and safe to be saying no, setting the boundary, asking for help, working through the trigger, your brain is literally designed to help you avoid discomfort. And that's why we can keep in some of these behaviors or have a relapse, because we have not been taught how the brain functions and that it's wired to help you avoid discomfort, when discomfort is the very thing we have to walk through to get to the other side and to build these new identities, right? And then also, if your nervous system is stressed, you have high cortisol, maybe your progesterone is low, your estrogen is low, your thyroid's off. These hormone imbalances significantly impact our neurotransmitters, which dictate our mood and how we feel and how we perceive everything. And if you're deficient and depleted and exhausted, you are going to feel much less capacity to want to get uncomfortable because you're already in discomfort with the way that you're feeling. But this is the vicious cycle, because staying in the same ways of being and feeling keep fueling more of the depletions and imbalances that keep impacting the way that we feel and perceive everything. So that's why we need to go slow and make sure we're supporting the nervous system and supporting the hormones and supporting the physical body while we support the emotional. And there's many beautiful, gentle ways to do that. And that's why I keep saying it takes time, be patient, gift yourself grace. Because if you try to force or rush through this journey, you will probably end up like overwhelming your nervous system even more.
Yeah. 2 more questions. Number 1, you mentioned cinnamon and rooibos tea. And I wonder, can you share with us some of the intel on those lines and anything else that you feel is really simple to get our hands on and easy to help us regulate?
Yeah, so they're rich in chromium, and chromium is the blood sugar supporting mineral. So that's why those are always really good to add in via the cinnamon, via the tea. As far as other things to support blood sugar, like I think it's personally really dependent on what is going on with the specific person. Are you taking medications? Because I don't really like to blanket recommend, especially supplements, because if something interferes, like I can't be held liable. So it's really about each individual and what is going on for you and what do you need. I do think we need to stop skipping breakfast and stop waiting until 12 o'clock to eat. Fasting does not work for women who have hormone imbalances, emotional eating, binge eating, food addiction. You're fighting with your body and your weight. Your body's already in a heightened state of stress, and skipping breakfast and waiting until 12 or 1 o'clock to eat is only going to amplify your potential of overeating or binging later in the day. It also will suppress your thyroid function more, slow your metabolism down, and actually work to shut off your hunger signal, ghrelin, which makes you hungry. So, starting to eat something small within 30 minutes of waking up, having a wholesome breakfast within an hour or so of waking up, I think that is incredibly important because a lot of women say to me, I'm not hungry, so I don't eat. And I say, well, actually, that is not a good sign. If you're not hungry, there are either hormone imbalances going on, low stomach acid. There is something, though, that is shutting off your ability to have a hunger signal. And we need to investigate what that is. And while we're investigating, we need to wake that hunger signal back up, which means eating regularly and not going more than 3 hours without eating. If you need to have a snack between, that's fine. But we want to make sure our snacks have protein, fat, or one or the other, and that all of our meals, like I said, have protein and fat. Animal digests a lot more slowly than plants. So I do suggest, if you're open, more animal protein. And we need to have good quality carbohydrates. So things that come from nature, fruits, vegetables, starchy vegetables. Maybe some women can do grain. I don't really care for grain. So I rely on getting a lot of my carbohydrates from root vegetables, from my fruits. But everyone is a little bit different. And again, this is where it's a very unique approach. But these kinds of things and making sure you get enough carbohydrates to support your adrenal health and your cortisol health is also very important. So trying to not go to the extreme diets and eating styles, which can just throw your hormones out of whack more, throw your blood sugar out of whack more, bringing in a more balanced approach is incredibly important. So those would be some of my biggest recommendations. And ideally, don't eat right before bed, especially things that are more processed. So this is where healing your relationship with food comes in again. Aim for your 8+ hours of sleep a night. Drink enough water. Self-care is incredibly important to regulate your nervous system, and that's going to help balance your blood sugar. Get sunshine, get your feet in the grass. Like, pick 1 or 2 things to start with. But now you have a checklist and you can work through the things that I've just talked about and work toward building those up.
To that end, I'm going to close us out and I'm going to do my workout. I'm going to make myself a killer protein-laden breakfast with some greens. And then I'm going to take a rest in a sauna. Thanks to you.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I was going to be recording between you and my next appointment, and I've decided I'm actually going to take care of myself instead. May it be of service to you, our listener. Amber, I will include some links here: the emotional eating quiz, the free freedom consultation, your podcast website. Listener, Amber's podcast is called the No Sugarcoating Podcast. And it's pretty exceptional, and it's got a lot of traction in this world. And I want to recommend it strongly. Her Instagram is where she shares a lot of really good teachings, pithy teachings on how we can take care of ourselves in real time. So I recommend that as well. She's also got a YouTube channel, which I'll incorporate here in our show notes. Amber, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you would like to include, both for the listeners of the Practice You podcast and for the women who listen to The Matter of Menopause?
Yes. You're not crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. And it doesn't matter what your quote unquote age is. You can always heal and overcome the very things that feel like they're standing in your way right now. We have to stop giving our power away to our age and saying, well, I can't change now, it's too late. It is never too late to make change, to heal, to step into your power and build this new identity with your body and food. You do not want to regret looking back and not changing it. You want to look back and be proud of yourself for going there and being patient and gifting yourself grace on the journey. So just know that it is fully possible for all of you and you deserve it. And what is the first step that you are going to take to get on that path?
Even if it is just standing in the grass with bare feet or putting your face in the sun first thing in the morning. Oh, thanks for affirming a few things that I was thinking about fasting recently. I did that for some time and it didn't seem to work well in my blood reading. So I'm no longer doing that. And if you are a listener to the Matter of Menopause podcast and you've heard me talk about fasting, please know we are works in progress and I'm giving myself grace as Amber recommends and telling you that my blood looks better now that I'm eating some protein in the morning and not skipping breakfast. My stomach acid is better and everything feels somehow much more balanced. So thank you for affirming that. Thank you, Amber, for being here, for making me cry first thing, rendering me speechless. I don't know what happened. And thank you for all of our listeners into the future who will benefit from what you've shared here today and from your work in this world. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.